Um, the motion is 2019 International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. The theme for this celebration is Orange the World. Generation Equity, Stand Against Rape. And the Senate notes that the United Nations General Assembly designated 25th of every year as International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women in its resolution 48/104 of 20th December 1993. The premise of the day is to raise awareness to the fact that women around the world are subject to various forms of violence, rape, domestic violence, trafficking for sexual and domestic slavery with impunity. The Senate further notes that the theme for this year's celebration is Orange the World. Generation Equality, Stand Against Rape. The theme is very apt as it speaks to the issues of rape, which has assumed an alarming and unprecedented dimension in our nation. The Senate further notes that the orange color has been adopted globally due to what it represents in nature. The color orange combines red and yellow to give an alluring look, which is said to represent emotional strength in difficult times. We hope that this year's theme, Orange the World, will give some hope to victims of rape. The Senate is aware that violence against women and girls is the most pervasive human rights violation. As representatives of the people, the Ninth Senate shall continue to do whatever it takes to stop this menace. We shall not allow people blame indecent dressing among women as the cause of rape. The cases of rape of 2-week-old and 6-month-old babies, or rape of 60 to 80 years old women clearly tells us this menace is more deeply rooted. The Senate is further aware of the recent attack and burning to death of our sister and mother, Mrs. Salome Abu, the PDP woman leader in Kogi state election. The attack and humiliation of female candidates in the same election. The death of Ochanya Elizabeth Ogbanja, a 13-year-old junior secondary school student of the Federal Government College, Boko, who died as a result of complications from various forms of sexual violence, rape, abuse by her uncle and cousin. The BBC Sex for Great saga, and many more of such deep-rooted violence against women and rape, which has reached unprecedented level in our nation. The Senate is concerned that in the year 2019 will remain a remarkable year in the history of Nigeria, as the issue of rape and violence against women reached a climax, revealing the hydra-headed monster we have been dealing with over time. The Chrisland School Lagos rape case, where a teacher defiled a 2-year-old and was jailed for 60 years. The Ekiti State conviction in favor of a 7-year-old girl raped by a 53-year-old man, and so many more such cases reported and unreported. The trafficking of persons for sexual and domestic slavery has also taken a toll on our communities. The recent slave camps discovered in Kano, Oyo, and Kaduna states, where young boys and girls are held as slaves and constantly raped by those who are meant to take care of them. All these show that our women, minors, both male and female, are no longer safe in our communities, homes, schools, and worship places. The Senate commends all concerned stakeholders, both local and international, who made it possible for the launch of the Nigerian Sexual Offenders Register, which was launched yesterday. The launch of the register is a major step in the fight against this menace that has bedeviled our society. The register is a database of all sexual offenders categorized as those who have been convicted and those who are linked with sexual offenses. This is in line with Section 1, 4, and 42 of the Violence Against People Prohibition Act 2015. Alongside the Sexual Offenders Register is a database of service providers, professionals, and caregivers that citizens can report sexual violence to, and even perpetrators can also approach for advice and support. Accordingly, the Senate resolves to 1. condemned the killing of Mrs. Salome Abu, the PDP woman leader who was set on fire in her home and allowed to die in the most gruesome way, and observe a minute silence in her honor. 2. Urged the Inspector General of Police to ensure the arrest and prosecution of all those involved in the murder of Mrs. Salome Abu. The Senate also condemns the violence against female candidates in the just concluded Kogi state elections. 4. The Senate felicitates with Nigerian women on this year's International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. The Senate also commends stakeholders, both local and international, for the launch of the Sexual Offenders Register yesterday, the 25th of November, 2019. Finally, the Senate urged states who are yet to domesticate the Child Rights Act of 2003 and the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015 to do so for the socio-economic development of their states and the nation at large.
I'm doing this willingly, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise to second this motion as moved by Senator Betty Apiafe. And I want to thank her for bringing this up again today, because it buttresses the fact that we have problems, we have issues, and we need to talk about these issues so that we can also find reasons for laying them away. Mr. President, as you know, we're battling so many things, especially as women. Violence against women, rape, taking undue advantage of our gender is a major problem in our country. And right now, the elections have even opened us up to worse cases of violence, especially that of the woman leader of the PDP in Kogi State. Mr. President, going through this motion, I have seen that something serious is being done, especially as concerns the Nigerian Sexual Offenders Register. And I am urging the people in charge of the register to kindly include men of influence who are involved in all this misconduct. Mr. President, the time has come for Nigeria to take a serious stance against violence, against rape, and especially during elections. I believe that our colleagues will support this motion, and I know that going forward, Nigeria needs to sit together and do something about violence, especially violence against women and children. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, Jeff. I represent Benue Northwest. Mr. President, my dear colleagues, I rise to identify and support this motion on the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. Mr. President, if you listen to the news or you watch the news these days, you'll be alarmed at the rate and volume of violence against women. Mr. President, you have read of cases where women are abducted just to harvest their private organs for whatever that is used for. Mr. President, there's a case, a harrowing case of a woman from Benue State who was kidnapped and for three months was used as a sex slave. As she recounted her story, she said she was lucky to have escaped alive because right there in the camp, lots of women were used in similar fashion and some killed after that. So you begin to ask yourself, what kind of country are we living in now? When you have months-old babies raped, you have children raped, and then you have women raped, and I understand they now harvest underwears of women too, for whatever purposes that those are used for. So I think this is a matter we should take to the front burner, not just on this day that has been targeted by the United Nations for the elimination of violence against women, but every other day, so that we get to eliminate some of these days from, some of these practices. It is not just about this motion, it's about getting the agencies concerned, like national orientation agencies, to drum it into the ears of those who are into such practices, that it's a new wind that blows nobody any good. So I want to identify with this motion, and I've gone through the resolution that I sought, and I support all of them. I also ask my colleagues to support this motion because it's very, very important in the light of what we are witnessing today. Thank you.
Distinguished colleagues, I am Issa Jibrin, representing Kogi East. I want to thank the promoter of the last motion in respect of the violence, electoral violence, especially the one that has to do with Kogi State, and in particular, the woman in question. I want to say it here that that woman only happened to be a victim of the circumstance. She was a very peace-loving woman. And the attack on her was a retaliatory attack. An attack was mounted on supporters of APC after Yaya Bello was declared the winner of the election in her area. 2 people almost died. They are still on danger list in the hospital, arising from that attack. It was a retaliatory attack on PDP members, and unfortunately, she became the victim. Very painful. Way forward, Mr. President, I want to believe that there is an urgent need for a bill in respect of election violence in Nigeria. A bill that will institute various deterrent measures. A bill that will address pre-election, during election, and post-election violence in Nigeria. I almost lost my life during the last election in Kogi State. Some people are still on danger list. One person died yesterday arising from the violence. And I think the same thing also happened at various locations in Bayelsa State. I want to propose that, way forward, there should be sanctions that will act as deterrent to an occurrence of any form of violence before, during, and after elections in Nigeria. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished, let me redirect our debate. This motion is not about violence, electoral violence. This motion is about violence against women. So I think the mover of the motion only used the example of that thing. So let's not confuse this motion from the one that we took before it. Very distinguished Senator
James Ebiowo, Manager, CON, Delta South. Mr. President, first, as a seasoned lawmaker yourself, particularly after listening to the last speaker, you needed to redirect the House. And that is understandable, Mr. President, because the last speaker specifically brought out the Kogi one as an example and also gave reasons why it happened. So that naturally would elicit reactions. And because you are a seasoned lawmaker now presiding, you knew or you know what is likely to come after his contribution. And I'm sure you have directed us well. Having said that, Mr. President, in the society we live in, whether anybody likes it or not, Where there is a man, there is a woman. And where there is a woman, there must be a man. These two must be together at all times. Otherwise, there will be no society. And if you remember your Bible or the Quran, or all the religious books, you know how God created this world. And the way God created this world from the beginning, that is how it has always been. And it will continue to be so. And believe you me, between a man and a woman needs all the protection from a man. God created the world like that. And therefore, at every given point in time, there is this struggle on the part of women to be recognized, to be respected. And that is the very essence of this motion. And of course, brought to the Senate by no other person than the chairman, Senate Committee on Women Affairs. And the members of the committee, which of course includes all the women. And there are some other men who, who also tie apart like women. It has always been so on the floor of the Senate. It has always been so. And those who move very close to women at all times, they are also members of the committee. So, Mr. President, that struggle, we must encourage it. We must do everything humanly possible for women to get to where they must be. And we hope and pray that one day there must be an elected governor of a state that is a woman. Not indirectly, like what happened in Anambra State. One day, starting from the state, one day, we must aspire to ensure that one day a woman will lead this country. The men have been leading, and the results are there for everybody to see. So one day, let us at least try a woman to lead this country. Mr. President, the mover of this motion also brought out the Kogi example. In a way, although you have directed the House, let us at least protect women at all times. The Kogi case was most unfortunate, and I condemn it. In everything in me, I condemn it. Whether it is retaliatory or else, that must never happen. And I want to agree with the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Those who did that act, this dastardly act, they must be brought out. And if they have been arrested, as reported in the media, they must be paraded for everybody to see. That is the first step. And the police usually celebrate parading suspects. This one, I have not seen that. This one must not be swept under the carpet. For a woman to be burned to death, I think it's an abomination. Mr. President, having said all that, I support this motion, and I want to urge my respected colleagues to also support the motion, so that let the women get to where they should be. At least one day, Alero, who is a distinguished senator today, will allow a woman to take over from him. So that one day, the Senate President, who has been here for the past 20 years or so, will allow a woman to take over from him. Mr. President, having said all that, thank you very much, Mr. President.
Mr. President, Rocha Sokrocha, Imo West. I really wonder, anytime issue of women come up, it creates some kind of laughter and in the minds of men. But the motion before us is too serious, because we are talking about not just women, our mothers to be, or even our mothers. And I know that every senator here is directly or indirectly too close to the mother. And we know that as growing up kids, you don't dare abuse my mother and go free, but you can abuse my father, and I will not respond to you. That tells how important women are in society and to us generally. But I think it's high time, Mr. President, that we listen to women of Nigeria particularly and make a loud condemnation of this violence against women. Most of us do not know that women are going through a lot of emotional torture. Women go through a lot in our political system, in our social life system, because somehow I don't think our nation have taken this matter seriously. It's becoming like a national anthem that when we say it and everybody just sing it anyhow. But I think we should listen to this motion and first of all, as the Senate, totally condemn this and dramatize it. And those who do this will be the men and leaders of our society. But for some reason, most men believe that women are under. I agree, but it's not the case because they're also human. My dear sister, distinguished senator, I support you in this motion, but I think a step should be taken further by women of Nigeria. Because if there are cooperations among the women, I'm sure the women will defeat the men. But first of all, also preach the gospel that women must come together to fight this, not just a lonely voice. Because the 13-year-old girl raped, immorality everywhere, decay of morals in our society, 2-year-old baby. We hear all these cases, and somehow it's swept under the carpet as if it is nothing. Are we waiting until it becomes our daughters and our wives and our mothers that are directly involved that before we can react? I think the time has called for urgency now that we should address this issue of violence against women, whether emotionally or physically against any woman. And Mr. President, though you have spoken on the issue of Kogi, we have talked about it, but people should be raising this up. When things of this nature come, let us not politicize it. Let's condemn it. It's not political. It has nothing to do with politics. Once death comes into a matter, irrespective of your party affiliation, we must condemn it totally. And there's no excuse whatsoever. No one should make an excuse or make it look like it has been a tradition. It's not just a tradition. Even if it's a tradition, it must stop. That nobody's blood should be led for issues of election. And our electoral act must be guided accordingly. So we can stop this violence and hate in our political practice. And who are we deceiving? We're deceiving the society. Today we're PDP, tomorrow we're APC, tomorrow we're APC, tomorrow we're PDP, which means we're looking for opportunity to just get to power without considering the impact of the negativity on the poor masses of Nigeria. So I support you, madam, that this issue must be taken to a higher level and the Senate must lead the campaign against violence on women. Thank you.
Woman leader who was set on fire in her home and allowed to die in the most gruesome way, and observe a minute's silence in her honor. Those in favor of prayer 1 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 2. Urge the Inspector General of Police to ensure arrest and prosecution of all those involved in the murder of Mrs. Salome Abu. Those in favor of prayer 2 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 3. Condemn violence against female candidates in the just concluded Kogi state elections. Those in favor of prayer 3 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 4. Felicitate with Nigerian women on this year's International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. Those in favor of prayer 4 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 5. Commend stakeholders, both local and international, for the launch of the Sexual Offenders Register yesterday, the 25th of November 2019. Those in favor of prayer 5 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. And prayer 6. Urge states who are yet to domesticate the Child Rights Act 2003 and the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act VIPP 2015 to do so for the socio-economic development of their states and the nation at large. Those in favor of the prayer 6 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. 1 minute silence.